Hello and welcome to this online tutorial that's going to instruct you on how to catalog a local music CD originally using Horizon. My name is Cheryl Hill. I'm the Technical Services Librarian here at SELCO, and I'm going to walk you through the process, sort of my thought process of what I do when I'm cataloging a local music CD. There's more than one way to do this, so not everything may be exactly the same way that you do it. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same way, as long as we're getting to the same place and providing the right access for the patron. We're going to jump right in, and I'll highlight some of the areas that are important to get correct as you're going through an original local music CD using Horizon. So as you can see here, I have Horizon displaying. The first thing you're going to want to do is go into cataloging, and you may not have as many options as I do here. That's okay. You should have cataloging available. Bibliographic record here in your navigation bar. If you don't have this navigation bar open on your left hand side, it's really easy. You hit this button right here at the top that you should all have because it's a default setting. So you can drag it over so you can see more information here. You're going to create a new bibliographic record or a new bib by double clicking here. Move this over, and we're going to start with a CD. We are doing a music CD, so we'll see if there's a template already set up. Music on compact disc. We're going to hit OK. And this should give you the major fields that you're going to need. And Becky has gone ahead and added in the proper RDA fields, because anything you do originally should be done in RDA at this point. And if you haven't taken RDA class, then you should sign up for that. All right, I'm going to close my navigation bar here just to give you more of the mark record. Now, you'll notice the fixed fields come in. There are red marks. Hopefully you've taken class and you know red is bad and you need to fix those. The record is also in process up here. That's the status. It's important at the end. We're going to go through and change that back to CC. Horizon, the template, has filled in sort of the standard mark tags that you would need to for a music CD, but you may need to add some or you may need to change some. Now the other thing to note is, for those of you who don't know, that an 024 tends to be the UPC or other standard identifier. You can have this description display here on the left by being in a mark record, then going up to View Labeled. And you can see that removes it. By clicking it, it brings it right back. So that's View Labeled, but you have to be in a mark record in order to have that option display. So, since you all aren't here in the room with me, I have taken pictures of the music CD that I am actually cataloging today. Here is the CD, the actual CD that you put in your CD player. We're dealing with Faribault's The Church Sisters. There's You is the title. That's the disc. This is the back cover. You can see most of the information on this is on the back cover, and that tends to be how it is with local CDs. Here's the front cover. Again, like I said, most of the information is on the back cover, but the chief source of information in ASCR2, or the first place you want to go in RDA, is the disc itself. So that's where you start, is the actual physical disc for a music CD. If you can't find the information on the disc, then you go to the other information, the container. If this had a sleeve in it, you would go there. Maybe it had some other kind of accompanying material. You could use that. But we're going to start with the disc, and that's where we're going to take our title and our artists. So we're dealing with, the title is There's You, and I always, when I'm cataloging, I almost always put the title in first because it's the easiest thing to start with, and it is a required field. You need to have a title in there. Okay, so now we're going to enter in the title, and we're taking the title right as we see it off the resource, and we're going to our first place to find that title, which would be the disc, and we're typing in the apostrophe S. just like it is on the disc itself. We are capitalizing the T because we're following normal English punctuation. And now Becky is entering in the statement of responsibility, which in this case is the Church Sisters, because in musical CDs, artists are the statement of responsibility. And then we are going to mess around with some of the punctuation here, get rid of the subfield B because there's no subtitle on this resource. And we're making sure that the backslash stays with the subfield C, the statement of responsibility, and we're getting rid of the colon and the subfield B. So now we're going to take our resource, or our statement of responsibility for this resource, and we're going to enter it into the main entry, which in this case is a 110 because it's a corporate body. Musical groups count as corporations, not as personal names. So Becky's going to type in what we think the authority record would be if the Library of Congress was creating an authority record, because we want to try to get it as accurate as it may be in the future. And you'll notice that she dropped off the and put in that musical group. And we did this because we looked at another authority record, another band that we know of, that is so in this case, The Cure. And The Cure, you can see the authority record here drops off the and puts in musical group with the M capitalized. So that's how we copied it over, but using our artist. So at this point, we've entered in our title and our statement of responsibility. We've added in our main entry as a 110 for the corporate name. And at this point, I would check my resource and see if there was any kind of identifying number. A publisher number you might find on a music CD, that's an 028. A UPC you'll also find on a music CD, that is an 024. And very rarely you might find an ISBN on a music CD. But any of those qualifying identifying numbers would be what I would add next, simply because they're pretty much standard typing in. This resource, as you could see as I was flipping through the different images, doesn't have any of that. So we're going to go ahead and skip down from here, the numbering at the top. We would see if there was any kind of addition statement. And again, you can see from our CD image here, there is no addition statement. You probably can't see all this tiny script, but there's no addition statement there. So what we are going to do, what we have next, and another required area, is to enter in our publication information. If you go to the back image here of our CD, very small, right where Becky's circling is our what we're going to use for our publication information. It's basically a recording studio. There is no real publication information that says anything about copyright or publication, so we're going to use what's available to us, and in this case it is Pickett's Recording Studio, and it's in Cora, Virginia. And Becky is typing exactly what she sees on the resource itself, so you don't have to abbreviate Virginia, and she's just typing it exactly the way you see it on the resource. Now the date is what goes in the subfield C, and that becomes a little bit more tricky because there is no date on the resource itself, but you really want to find a date. The date is one of those areas that you really do need to provide for your patrons. So there is a website on the back of this CD, and Becky's pulling up the website now. And we've gone through this website. We've kind of looked at all the different areas. If we were lucky, right about here where you find this store CD, you would find a great date that tells you when the CD was published, but we're not that lucky. So instead, we're making our best educated guess from some of the other pages, inferring what we think the most likely dates are. We've figured out that the copyright of the website is 2011, and since it's currently 2013, We know this CD was published between 2011 and 2013. So RDA allows for you to write that data right in, and we're putting it in brackets because it is not coming from the resource itself. It is coming from our websites and inferred from our own heads. So the date is between 2011 and 2013, and that's going to go ahead and go just as we've shown it in brackets. All right, now that we have our publication information in our 260 field, we're going to just keep moving down the MARC record here and fill in our 300 field, which is our physical description. So oftentimes I don't always remember what the terminology is for the 300 field. So when that happens, I find another record that is the same type, same format, and I do a little cutting and pasting, or I copy and retype, or however is easier for me to do. And you can see that Becky is looked at the new Pearl Jam CD, and so she is cutting and pasting. And in Horizon, this is something you want to do one subfield at a time. You can't really cut and copy the entire subfield, the whole tag. That just won't really, it won't work for you. So she's doing one subfield at a time. She is not taking over the stereophonic at this point because our CD is not a mass-produced, BMG big corporation CD. It's just a local thing, so we don't know if it's stereophonic. So, and it doesn't tell you anywhere on here that it's stereophonic. So we're going to leave that information out. We are going to go ahead and use our 4 3/4 inches, and it's okay to abbreviate inches in RDA, but you really don't want to abbreviate anything else. Whereas if this was an AACR2, the digital might be abbreviated and some of the publication information would have been abbreviated. So now that our physical description is filled out to the best of our ability, we're going to move on down to our RDA content, media, and carrier types. You've hopefully taken class, so you should know we refer to these as CMCs. So Becky's going to pull up one of the handouts that you would have gotten in class called your GMD to CMC guide. So for those of you who cataloged in AACR2 with SELCO, you would remember that we had a long list of GMDs. That was one of the appendices of the cataloging manual. And what Becky and Christy did some time ago was they took those GMDs, the most common ones, and they mapped those out to what the CMCs, the content, media, and carrier types are in RDA. So that's what she's looking at right now. And she's going to do some cutting and pasting and put those fields into her MARC record. Okay, so she's pasting in her CMCs. So first we're going to put in performed music, and you remember that our content type, our first of our CMCs, is how the music communicates its ideas to us. So in the case of a music CD, it is a performed music. That's how it's sharing its ideas. Our media type is the 337, and this is what machine is required to communicate with those ideas. So the ideas are being spread to us as performed music. It requires some kind of audio player to communicate those ideas to us. And finally, we have our carrier type, which is basically the format. What physical format, what physical carrier does this material take? And in the case of a music CD, it is an audio disc. So now we've got our CMC, performed music, audio, and audio disc, our 3, 3, 6, 7, and 8s. And the last thing that we do here at SELCO is we add in the 339, which is a local format. We're using that to replace the GMD, and these are designed as fixed fields. Now we're working from a template, so the template already had the proper 339. And if you've taken RDA class, you would have learned how to enter this in properly. All right, so we've added in our RDA content, carrier, and media type for this record. We've talked about our local format, our music CD there that's in green and underlined, and yes, that's how it's supposed to look. The other thing you may notice is up in the 300 field, Becky has gone ahead and added in 41 minutes, which is the playing time for this CD. Another thing to note is that if you want, you can use CD, the actual CD, just like that. She's going to show you like that. Instead of audio disc, you are allowed in RDA to use common language like that. You'll also notice that Becky put in the 41 minutes in proper format in the playing time. And we figured out that the CD was 41 minutes by putting it in our CD player, which is our computer. And it popped up in Windows Media Player, and right there in the bottom left, you can see it says it's 41 minutes long. So that's where we got the time, the playing time for this CD. So the next thing we did was, first we went to fill in the performer information. The next thing we did was we looked at the resource itself. We took a look at the back of the CD, and kind of there in a bunch of text underneath the actual songs are a bunch of thank yous and information about who helped play what. It says things like, thank you to our brother Seth, who has worked so hard to learn and play the lead guitar in such a short amount of period, and a bunch of other names. And including the two sisters' names. Actually, the two sisters' names are not on there. So what we did was, because we were already on the website looking for information about publisher, we found all the other players, including the church sisters themselves, Savannah and Sarah. We found Seth's last name. We found their bassist's last name, who's also thanked on the back of the CD case, is Jay Duncan, Seth Church, and Josh Pickett, who also recorded the album. He additionally played the guitar and the bass, which it does say on the back of the CD case. So basically, we took the names that were on the back of the CD case as contributing to the work, to the intellectual content of the work, which in this case would be music, and we found some of those last names on the website to sort of fill out that information. And because it's a note field, we don't really need to put that in brackets. We also found on the back of the sleeve that it says produced and recorded by Josh Pickett, and so he goes in one of those 508s for production credits instead of actual performer credits. He's actually in both because he is a performer and a production person. If you want, you can look at the Library of Congress site. This is the LC Mark site. You can just Google LC Mark and you'll find this, and you can go to the bibliographic record and look for your specific mark tag, and it gives you all sorts of examples and directions and information about how to fill out those specific mark tags. All mark tags, actually, you can find in there. But the most handy part are the examples. The other thing you can do is, if you're not sure how or what or who to put where, is take a look at some other MARC records in Horizon. So here are some other music CDs, and you can see how they put in different performer and production credits. So then the last thing we've done here on this record so far is we've added in 2 added entries. Now, we did not take Savannah and Sarah Church from the 511 for the performers. We actually put them in there because they are the main entry. They are the 110. They are the church sisters. So we're explaining who the church sisters are. Now, you could, if you wanted to, add in added entries for, all the other performers in the 511. It's probably, for such local material, not really worth your time. You can do keyword searches to find that information. On the other hand, if it was somebody famous listed in the 511, like let's say you had Johnny Cash as a performer, he guested on one of the songs, I would probably put him as an added entry. That is subjective. That's up to you. Save yourself the time, and remember that most people tend to do keyword searches, so you might be okay skipping some names there. Okay, so we've added in some performer and creator notes and the playing time and some added entries. So the next area of the record we're going to talk about are the 505 field, which are your contents notes. For music CDs, this tends to be the actual names of the songs, the titles, the tracks on the CD. Here we've typed in, again, these are taken right from the back of the sleeve of the disc, right there. They usually, often, not all the time, will have the playing time next to the title. I sometimes will add this in. In this case, I didn't, just because of time and because we have the 41 minutes playing time and 2 other places in the record already. It might be a little overkill to add in the individual tracks playing time. If I'm doing copy and it's there, I certainly leave it. But for the most part, people are playing CDs either on an MP3 player or on a computer, and that all will show the different playing times for each songs for you anyway. So certainly you can add it if you want to. I would take it from the CD itself. If there's any conflicts, I would probably take it from the screen I'm looking at right now instead of the back of the sleeve, which might be misprinted. But I tend not to add it in, especially if I have the entire playing time of the CD. So the other area we've added in are subject headings. So again, this is an area that's required, just like our title and our statement of responsibility, our 300 field, and our publication information is all required. You need to have some kind of subject heading for a record. This provides access for people. We got the subject headings simply by putting the CD in the computer here and listening to it for a few minutes, and then looking at the different names of the tracks. So by listening to it, it was very clear it was bluegrass. And by looking at some of the track names, especially the last one, Near the Cross, which is a hymn, and some of the other names gives away that it's contemporary Christian music. So we typed that in and browsed it and linked to the correct subject heading. So if you're doing original cataloging, you should know what I mean when I say browsing headings. So we're going to go ahead and play a little bit of a track for you so you can hear what we heard. So that sounds pretty bluegrassy to me. So that's how we picked the subject headings. All right, so our record is looking pretty complete. We've filled in most of the descriptive fields. Our variable length fields are pretty much done. So now the last thing that I always do when I'm doing a record is I check over my fixed fields. So I'm going to start here at the leader, which is also known as your 000. This is an automatic field that's filled in by Horizon. It's a required field. You have to have this. The computer uses it for all sorts of stuff. It needs to be there. For the most part, the specific fields within this tag will be filled in for you. N for record status is new record, and then you have your type in the next field, and we're just hitting our cursor using the arrow keys there to move between them. Is J because it's a musical sound recording, and you can always see right at the top there what the fixed field is and what the choice is that you have chosen in that field. You can also hit the F12 button, and the F12 button works for all fixed fields, and you pretty much choose the one that makes the most sense. So you wouldn't want to choose a kit. You wouldn't want to hit non-musical sound recording because we just listened to bluegrass music, so it's obviously a musical sound recording. So that's J. It is a monograph, not a serial. Serial is something that's published with no definitive end. This has a definitive end, so it's a monograph. Then, let's see, you pretty much go through to your encoding level, and you want to do full level by OCLC participant. The other options are, let's see, minimal level, pre-pub level. You're working with the item in your hand, so you're doing full level cataloging and you are a full level OCLC member. So you always want to make sure that that is I. The last thing you need to note in this fixed field is that you want your cataloging form to be I for ISBD punctuation. Now, the ISBD punctuation are your colons and your backslashes and your periods. You do not want to choose AACR2 because you're not doing this in AACR2. You're doing this in RDA using ISBD punctuation. All right, so the next thing you're on is your 007 field, which my illustrious colleague here, Becky, reminds me that it is the 007 field, the license to describe. Yeah, so instead of license to kill, you're describing. So the 007 field is basically describing the material you have in your hand. And you're going to start always by checking that first type. For any material you do that's sort of a non-regular print, you always want to check this first type field and make sure it makes sense by hitting F12, or in this case, we know from looking above that S is sound recording. Next, we go to our material description, and you only have one of these for a sound recording. For other formats, you would get other options for your 007 field depending upon what you put in that type. So for the sound recording, the disc, we actually have a disc. We have a sound disc because we're dealing with a compact disc. For speed, again, you're going through and you're sort of picking the ones that make the most sense. I think if you hit F12 here, there's a bunch of options. And if you don't know, then you're going to choose something like unknown or not applicable or other, depending on whatever makes the most sense for your record. And a lot of times you will see that right on the resource. Next we have our playback channels, and again, we don't know what this is. If you were to hit F12, you would see all the options. We don't know if it's quadraphonic or stereophonic, so we just hit unknown. And next we have our, well, I'm not going to try to say that. Oh, groove, sorry, groove, width, and pitch. This isn't a record, so there are no groove widths or pitches, so it's not applicable. We do know the dimensions of our disc because pretty much all discs are 4 3/4 inches, so that is what we're choosing. And tape width, this is not a tape, so it's not applicable. Tape configuration, again, this is not applicable. And disc is mass-produced. This is mass-produced in the sense of it's not burned by your CD player, might be the best way. It was actually produced by a studio and recording company, so it's mass-produced in that sense. It kind of material, plastic with metal, that's what a disc is. So this cutting is not applicable. We don't really know what the cutting is, so we would just choose NA. And it is a digital recording because it's a compact disc, it's a CD, as opposed to an analog, which would be like a tape. So digital storage, same thing. It's a digital player, so it's digital storage. So that's our 007. It's physically describing your actual compact disc. So the 008 is the next fixed field. This is some more coding information that the computer needs to do various things. Pretty much all records have an 008, just like an 00 or liter. And it also does some description, but in a different sense. It's not actually describing the physical material, it's more describing the physical description fields. It's kind of a repeat of some of that information that the computer uses these fields a lot for facets and other areas of the record. So our first date there is the date modified or the date entered, and that will fill in automatically when we save this record. So then the next date stamp we have is more about the publication date, and in this case, because we had 2 dates between 2011 and 2013, that's what we choose is M for multiple, which you can see when you hit F12. So we've chosen M for multiple dates, and we put the beginning and then the end date in the next 2 fields. The country is the country of publication, which in this case is Virginia, the state of Virginia, which we know is VAU. But if you don't know what the code is for Virginia, you hit the F12 key and you scroll down until you find Virginia. And accept value, and it fills it in for you. Form of composition is basically your genre, your musical genre, and this is bluegrass because we listened to it and that is the subject heading we gave it. Let's see, so format of music, this isn't a score or any type of score, so this is not applicable. And there's no parts, so it's just a disc. Audience level, I tend to do general, unless it's clearly a juvenile CD or clearly an adult CD. general works just fine. There's no accompanying material. Form of item. And if you hit F12, it's none of the following. It doesn't fit into any of these categories, so because it's a compact disc. So none of the following. There's no accompanying material. There is no, what is that one? Literary text. There's no text accompanying this material. And it's not an arrangement. It is in English. If you look at the case, it's all in English. So that's why we put ENG. Again, you can hit F12 if you have something in a foreign language. This hasn't been modified. You can see the options here. What I tell people is if you don't know what the fixed field is, hit F12. If none of them make sense, hit the not applicable, or in this case, that would be not modified. Source, for us, it's D, because we are not the Library of Congress or the National Ag or the National Library of Medicine. We're not a member of the CCP program, so we choose other source. And that's it. That's all of our fixed fields. So we've filled those in. There's nothing that's red. So now that we have filled in our fixed fields and our descriptive fields, the last thing you always want to do is hit the exclamation button and change the bib status from in process to cataloging complete. Hit OK. And you will notice that there is no created by or updated by, and there's no bib number because we haven't saved this. It's not really in the database yet. So now we're going to hit save. There's multiple ways to hit save. And it's thinking because it's filling in all the places in the horizon. And there we got a new bib number and a created by date. And that's it. That's how you catalog a music CD.